From the moment we step out of Vault 111, and as we progress the main storyline, we'll come to find that optimizing travel time and convenience becomes a bigger deal as the game takes us further and further away from our little sanctuary corner. We will at some point reach Diamond City, and running all the way back here to drop gear, house companions, and set up workstations becomes a colossal waste of time with no fast travel. We're gonna talk about why Hangman's Alley is so crucial for survival mode, and how we can maximize this settlement's functionality to get the most out of it. Sure, it's got unscrapable piles of rubble, wooden shacks, and hanging bodies, but we can still make something out of it. Not just that it's dead center in the middle of the Commonwealth, but its proximity to Diamond City, Bunker Hill, Good Neighbor, and Vault 81 makes this location a lot more valuable. A good portion of the main storyline revolves around downtown Boston, plus having all the trading hubs in close proximity allows us to offload junk, make caps, and pick up a good chunk of side quests a lot more conveniently. The nearby Charles River has great strategic value. Not only is it a close source for dirty water to craft soups, but it connects to a wide range of areas, allowing you to swing past high-level encounters. Aqua Girl perk comes in handy for this reason. I've personally used these river routes a bunch of times in my playthroughs and video guides, just to get past enemies in downtown Boston, especially on quests that require a lot of back and forth travel. Hangman's Alley isn't a big settlement, so we need to optimize the little space we have here to house companions and essentials. Part of this is offshoring some, if not all, food and water production. For this alone, we'll need local leader rank 1, which allows us to set up supply lines between settlements. Starlight Driving, being the closest source of water, is usually the go-to place to set up a water farm or any water production in general, but Sanctuary Hills can get the job done too. We can also get creative with commonly used settlement build glitches to maximize space. I'm using a concrete column, setting it next to the water pump, pressing E on the keyboard until both turn green, which overrides its collision box with that of the concrete column, and allows us to move them with less restrictions. We can also add in a water fountain or a kitchen sink to drink and fill up bottles with purified water. Abernathy Farms, Ten Pines Bluffs, and Great Gardens are easy to claim settlements with large farms that supply lots of potatoes and mud fruit, plus small amounts of corn, melons, and gourds. We should be supplementing these with additional crops as we progress the game so that we can craft things like adhesive and feed our growing settlement population across the Commonwealth. Now, I wouldn't recommend filling up this place with a bunch of farms and settlers, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. But if you do want to maximize farm space, I did make a whole video on this topic. The link is in the description below. Defense plays a crucial part here. We will need a defense value totaling the sum of your settlement's food and water production. I recommend getting at least Gun Nut rank 1, which allows us to build turrets with more defense rating. The base chance of attack is 2% for any settlement, and this chance goes up by 1% for every 100 water in the workbench and 1% for every 100 food. The chance of attack does go down with more defense rating, but you can still get screwed over with RNG, so this isn't a guaranteed protection against settlement raids. Hangman's Alley has around 3 raid spawn points. First one is on the left side beyond the main gate. The second one is on the opposite side of this corner. And the third one is just outside the alley. Enemies can and will spawn outside of these areas sometimes, so add defenses overlooking the entirety of our base just in case. Hangman's Alley is also a hotspot for enemies with random encounter locations nearby, so the more supply lines, settlers, and foot traffic you have running through here, the more likely they are to aggro enemies into your settlement. So limit the amount of supply lines and settlers living here if this becomes an issue. The Super Mutant outpost between Hangman's Alley and Diamond City has some stragglers spread all throughout the west side of Hangman's Alley. They aren't that hard to kill, but they can be a distraction to your settlers and companions. So clear these locations as soon as you can. And if we make a left here through this alleyway and into this tunnel, we'll find a raider encounter. These guys do respawn from time to time and can also be a distraction for your settlers. There is a hidden vendor down here too, just around this corner. He doesn't have a lot of caps and very little junk in his inventory. It's a cool little setup he's got here though. There is a much larger random encounter location between Hangman's Alley and Vault 81. If you ever come by after some time and your settlers are nowhere to be found, this is where they probably are. I would avoid running any supply lines from Overland Station or any settlements on the west side, and that includes Grey Garden up north, as they'll always walk through this hotspot and drag these enemies into your base. Now we'll go over to what I call the recreational stations. Depending on what DLCs you have, you'll have access to some, if not all of these workshop items which grant a temporary buff to your stats. So these ones here you can get right off the bat as soon as you start the game. And these ones are only available after completing the Vault 88 DLC. The stat buff is usually granted with just a few seconds of using each station, so you could probably stack a lot of these buffs under a few minutes. There's also a few more workshop items that I recommend putting down as well, like the Decontamination Arc from the Wasteland Workshop DLC, which heals rat damage when activated. This one's a great replacement for Right Away, which leaves some nasty stab debuffs when you consume them. The Vault-Tec Population Management Terminal is a great tool to track all companions' whereabouts and has some options for general settlement management. It might also be a good idea to set up a recruitment beacon, then just keep it turned off when you don't need it. Even with all these fancy DLC stations, the bell can still come in handy, so I recommend you still set one up in an open space. Now for actual workstations and shops, we're gonna need local leader rank 2. Set one of each and try saving all your crafting for when you're on your main base. Most companions will have a positive reaction whenever you use a workstation when they're nearby. We can fill up multiple affinity bars and lessen the time that it takes us to get their affinity perks when they're all bunched up in here. And if we romanticize most of them and sleep when they're nearby, we'll get the temporary Lover's Embrace buffs, which grants a 15% boost to experience earned. As we level up and our junk pile grows in size and value, we will need to set up our own stores in our settlement. And for that, we're also gonna need local leader rank 2 to unlock access to them. The high tier stores are locked behind Cap Collector rank 2, while the high tier medical store is locked behind Medic rank 1. I highly recommend setting up a clinic, even if it's a low tier store. Curing disease and illnesses for 15 caps is a bargain over consuming chems and dealing with debuffs. If you've completed the prep school quest through Kessler in Bunker Hill, you can also set up these trade caravan posts, which allows traveling merchants like Trashcan Carla, Cricket, Lucas Miller, and Doc Weathers to visit your settlement. With all these stores, companions, settlers, and traveling merchants coming in and out of Hangman's Alley, you are gonna have some problems with missing ammo and weapons at some point. Even if you put them in a separate container, settlers can still access them. If you're worried about settlers taking your stuff, you're better off putting them at home plate or an unpopulated settlement. In any case, there are pros and cons to having this many settlers and companions in your main base, so you decide what works best for you. I've been wanting to make a video on this topic for a while, so I hope you guys found the video helpful. Don't forget to leave a comment, give a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thanks for watching, see you all on the next one.